Okay, so what we've seen so far, and we've seen a lot of different things. But basically, if we can boil it down to a few concepts, we have seen that metabolism, yes, that word again, is composed of two parts, one being anabolism and the other one being catabolism. And we know that these are linked together. One consumes energy, the other one releases energy. Okay, so catabolism releases energy. Anabolism, in order to go to anabolism, we need energy. Okay, so there's an input of energy or an output of energy depending where you're going. All of us are doing this. All living cells, creatures are doing this. Metabolism is part of our lives. Okay? So, what I want to do is I want to connect the dots. So, I'm going to start our story with a not so distant star, not too far from us, okay? Shining on us every day for the past month and a half. Everybody's happy with that. And that star, called the sun, emits high energy particles known as photons. Okay? Those photons are captured by beautiful, beautiful plants. Some of them are flowers, some of them are vegetables, some of them are trees. What happens in these flowers is mostly done, so what we are interested in is mostly happens in the leaves and the green structures of these plants, where we can find chlorophyll. And we're going to have a look at what photosynthesis is and everything that happens here in a chapter eventually, but not now. What I want you to concentrate on is this. What happens in this part of the plant, right here, okay, is that carbon dioxide and water are being captured, okay? And with the photons hitting these structures, some electrons are being released. Okay? So the photons hit structures, and these structures start to emit electrons. These electrons are captured by some biochemical pathways. So in the cell, there are specialized structures that will capture these electrons and, yes, use carbon dioxide, which is, for us, a waste product. They will use that carbon dioxide and turn it through something called a Calvin cycle, which we will see. And with the Calvin cycle, turn this carbon dioxide into a molecule called glucose. Glucose will be transformed or compacted together or attached to one another, because those are subunits, into something called starch and other types of molecules. Okay? So glucose here is only a model. It's only one of the types of molecules that are being synthesized. Okay? There's other types of sugars as well, but we will just concentrate on glucose. Okay? So this here, all of that here, is the process of photosynthesis. Okay? That process of photosynthesis, is it a catabolic pathway? Is it an anabolic pathway? What is it? Okay? Is it the construction of molecules, or is it the usage and destruction of these molecules? It's anabolic. Right? We start from scratch. We start from carbon dioxide, which is a very, very small molecule, not a lot of energy. And this will be electrons will be combined with other carbon dioxide, transform them, create this huge, actually it's not huge at all, this nice glucose molecule, which is going to be attached into little chains like this, forming starch. Okay? So, this is just one part. We haven't seen the process of this, but what we've seen is we've seen that there is a possibility for construction of molecules called anabolism. And how is that done in a cell? We need workers to do this. And the workers are called enzymes. Okay? So these enzymes react to different conditions. They react to temperature, they react to pH, they react to lots of other conditions. Okay? So salt concentration and all that. Okay? So we have the workers that do this here. Then, eventually, all good things lead to an end, right? Leads to an end eventually. And what happens is that we have these types of, animals like that, right? These animals like this, they look like that. And they eat a lot of plants, right? So these animals will consume the plants. Okay? They will consume the plants because these animals, just like you and me and like any other living creatures, including the smallest amoeba that you can imagine, they all need energy. Okay? I told you before, and I'm going to say this again, we are condemned to eat. We have to eat. And we have to eat for only one reason, is to produce a nice energetic molecule that is used, that is a currency that is being used by all of our cells in our organism. Okay? And one of these molecules, one of very important molecule, is known as ATP, and this has a lot of energy. So all of our reactions, because all of these reactions don't just happen like that. Some of them are spontaneous, but yes, still, there is this little activation energy bump that we need to go past. So we need some enzymes, we need some ATP, we need some of that energy. So what happens here when our little creature here eats these plants, right? They are ingested and digested. So when glucose is being digested, so let's call glucose from now on because it's too long to write. Let's call it GLC, its symbol. Okay? So glucose has a lot of energy. Okay? But glucose, you can't light a fire with glucose, right? The energy is not the same type of energy. It's not like I have a match and it's hot, I can burn myself. It doesn't work like that. Energy that is imprisoned in the glucose molecule will need to be extracted a tiny bit at a time. A little bit by little bit by little bit. So how do we do this? We haven't seen this yet. But respiration, that's what we're going to look at. So that glucose is going to be shuttled inside the animal's cell. Okay? So whenever you're having a meal that has a lot of sugars in glucose, or even just a cup of coffee with glucose in it, or some kind of syrup containing, say, vanilla, well, this has a lot of glucose as well. And that glucose is going to create this spike of insulin inside your body, and that insulin is a hormone that is going to force your cells to capture that glucose. It's going to take it out of your bloodstream into the cells. That's clever. It works well. So here, we are now inside a cell. So I'm going to erase this. Just remember that it's still there. So we are still inside a cell. So glucose is shuttled in, gets inside. Now what happens inside that cell? That's what's interesting. that glucose, that's now inside, is going to be degraded bit by bit by bit by bit. Okay? So it's going to be degraded into small molecules, which I'm not going to name now. Small molecules. And it's going to be degraded into small molecules with the help of enzymes. Each reaction is a step, and that step needs to be, it needs help. So the enzymes will be very active here, right? So that's a cell. So glucose is being degraded. Catabolic reaction. Catabolic reaction. Anabolic, catabolic, metabolism here, right? So what we have here is we have the glucose, small molecules, and those small molecules are going to release very important particles that have a huge amount of energy, and usually they are caught in links. When two carbon are linked together, they're linked by something called a covalent bond. And that covalent bond means that these two carbon are exchanging electrons, and they're very good at it. And since they're very good at doing this, the electrons are flowing, and these two carbons are closed, and they're bound together. But what if I break this? What if I can break that bond? What's going to happen to some of the electrons? They're going to be released, right? So here, by forming small molecules, by breaking the bonds, I'm going to release those electrons. Okay? And those electrons are going to be captured by a specialized molecule. Let's call it a shuttle. So the shuttle is going to capture these electrons. Okay? Now, this happens in the cytoplasm of the cells. That's called glycolysis, and we're going to see this. Glycolysis. So the breaking of glucose molecules into smaller molecules and extracting electrons from that is called glycolysis. And those small molecules here are not useless. They can be used again. And these small molecules are going to be captured by a nice organelle, that is the thermonuclear central energy producing organelle found in your cell. We have lots of those per cell. This is called a mitochondria. And the mitochondria has doors. These doors will allow some of these molecules to get in, mostly one molecule to get in. So this molecule is going to get in. It's going to enter a series of reactions that will go round and round and round like that. Reactions are just being recycled. So the chemicals are being recycled with the use of these small molecules. And what's going to happen here is that some electrons are going to be released again. So you see, we extract electrons from bigger parts, and we have small bits and pieces. Those small bits and pieces for the cytoplasm would say, well, you know what? There's nothing I can do with that anymore. You know, that's specialized, right? So I need to ship this somewhere else so that they can take care of it. It's like recycling. You can recycle stuff at your house, but then when you have a plastic container at the end, well, I don't have any use for that, so I'm going to ship it somewhere that somebody can melt it and do, computers with it. Okay? So, here we are, going through this cycle, extracting electrons. So, we have our electrons here in the shuttle. And these electrons here will be, yes, you guessed it, part of another shuttle. You see, electrons never just travel by themselves. They need to be carried by specialized vehicles. And those specialized vehicles are the shuttle electron transporters. So we have electrons here as well. So those electrons, don't forget, they're high energy electrons. Why? Because they come from glucose. Why are they high energy? Because they come from the photons emitted by the sun. So the energy is still here, right? All of the energy is conserved here. You might forget about it, but thank the sun every day, because the sun is there and we're very happy it's there. No sun, no life. So glucose break down, electrons, and these electrons will be, some of them are already in the mitochondria, some of them will be shuttled inside the mitochondria. And the mitochondria, what's it going to do with it? Through a pretty complicated step, it's going to create ATP. Okay? So, this is what we're going to see, photosynthesis. We're going to see this in a special chapter just for that. This is what we're going to do, start today, and work on for the next week or so. All of the concepts that are embedded in all of this, the concept of energy and all that, this is what we've seen so far. What I did is just give you a base to understand what's coming. The vocabulary is important. The terminology is important. The concept of energy is important. Where does it go? Where does it come from? What's a delta G? What is a spontaneous reaction? Why is it it's not spontaneous? Why do we need enzymes? How do enzymes work? Okay? All of that is just the base so that you can start following this and understanding this at a much complicated or complex state. It's not easy, but it's not difficult either. But if you have a good base, then that's going to be easier. Okay? So that's where we're going. Okay? All right.